Bennett Reiner. His impact on music education, Bennett Reiner started publishing articles in the June-July 1956 issue of the Music Educators Journal. So he had a very long career because it started back in 1956. Bennett Reiner established the Center for the Study of Education and the Musical Experience at Northwestern University. Bennett Reiner believed that professional musicians and competent amateur musicians could be sources of inspiration in creating a community of music in the schools. He wanted to have community members come into the schools, one, to see what the musicians did because they were skilled artists, and two, to get the public support of the musicians in terms of school funding. Bennett Reiner died on November 18th in 2013. So Bennett Reiner realized that humans care about music. He felt that music education was how to teach music to best reflect what music is. So part of my information for the report is, you have to kind of define what music is. Music had a role in human life. Music education teachers should share beliefs, values, practices, and goals, but also be somewhat different. So you can't really do a one-size-fits-all, but you need to have an agreement on kind of the overall direction of where music's going and what music is. So Bennett Reiner encouraged us to recognize overlaps among seemingly contending views to allow a more close positions. So an inclusive position was preferred toward a closed extreme position. So the musical experience was important to Bennett Reiner, and it included form, practice, and social agency. For form, composers disappear, the performer disappears, and all that remains is the work. So the nature and value of the music found was what was important. It was the musical work itself. Music is the product of composers and performers, and to some degree that reflects their lives, their times, their beliefs, their aspirations, intentions, genders, races, and religions, because these are all part of the human qualities, and this is where music's created. But music in isolation has sound, with a value strictly as sound separated from the world and the experience of people who create it. Music creates its own distinctive world. We frequently enjoy music without any knowledge of the composer, the performer, or even the culture that it's from. Sounds in music mean only themselves. This meaning is different from anything else in the world that has a non-musical meaning. Music transports us from the normal world to a stream of life that's above and different than the normal world. The experience of art, for the most part, is primarily an intellectual one. The appreciation for art from its own sake is one of the ideas that Reiner supports. When one contemplates art, one inhabits a world with its own rules and unique experiences. There's no correspondence between the beauty we find in the non-music world and the beauty we find in the music world. The beauty of the music world is inside music. Ideas outside of the music do not need to be introduced to see the beauty of music. Formalists concentrate exclusively on the internal qualities of music, and they deny the political opinions or outside events that relate to music. Nothing else in the world precisely matches music. The extreme formists believe that few people are able to enjoy music. Most people relate to the non-musical aspirations of music, including stories, images, and ideas. The great philosopher Immanuel Kant stated that the formal relationships between the sounds were responsible for the beauty in music. This is not the same with literature and drama. So music has a unique quality about it because of this interrelation of sounds. No product can exist except as a result of the creative process. So Bennett Reiner felt that you can't just look at the form, you also must consider the process of music as well. So, but the extremist view, so Bennett Reiner views an existence on a continuum, where you have extreme views which are not accepted by everyone. So at the other extreme of the continuum, form was the most significant thing. Music is too complex, too inclusive, and too multifaceted to be entirely dependent on just one of these dimensions, was one of Reimer's main thoughts. So highly educated are able to find significance in musical form, but people even starting in the womb naturally groove to music. So the elitists would say that you have to understand the form of music, the final product, but Bennett Reiner would support the idea that the non-trained person can just enjoy the sounds of music, and that everyone should be educated in music. So music was valued just by the sheer pleasure of its sound. All music can be enjoyed for its sound, not just Western and classical music. So Bennett Reiner, felt that other types of non-Western music were important for music education. Musical form and sounds was organized to be musical, meaningful within a cultural context. So you also can't leave out the cultural context when considering music. Bennett Reiner also indicated that feelings are created through the sound of music. The form-sound dimension of music does not explain all of music's complexity. Music educators' goal is to enhance every person's ability to experience the power of music as fully as possible. Another continuum, aside from the form continuum, is the product versus process continuum. Music is doing, so music teachers should help students do what musicians do. This also kind of relates to that idea of bringing community members in so they can help students do music and see what musicians actually do. The actual product of music can be the primary interest to some, but the process of music is of interest to others. So the extreme views, according to Reiner, are skewed views. So he tried to use a synergetic approach that avoids extreme formalism and extreme praxisalism. So he considered 4 dimensions of music. You have a doer, you have doing, you have something done, and then you have the complete context in which the doers do what they do. So we should be appreciative of the contributions that all factors, and not necessarily view these factors in opposition. Form and action are compatible and even codependent. So students should understand the multidimensional effects of music. Doing is the traditional, long-standing position of American music education. Praxisalism, then, the performance emphasis, is part of this long-standing position of American music education. So according to the philosophical principles, Bennett Reiner encouraged a deeply felt aesthetic musical experience through contact with different musical activities. So not just performance, but listening would also be including. So you have the doing, and you have the performing, you have the listening. And you also would just not listen to the Western European music. You listen to music from all different cultures. Bennett Reiner did not believe that the value of music education came from music assisting the non-music disciplines. He did value music as its own discipline, especially because of that unique experience of what sound does. The interrelationship of sound is something you don't find in other experiences. So music should be studied as a standalone discipline. In general, Bennett Reiner advocated a broader music education curriculum with reduced emphasis on performance. According to one of the other articles we read in class, we had only 20% of the people participating in the high school performance ensembles. So Bennett Reiner is looking to broaden the music education offerings to increase music participation. So in answer to what is music education, Bennett Reiner viewed composing, performing, listening, and improvising as intelligences that should be part of music education curriculum because schools were about students' intellectual development. So once again, it's not the traditional emphasis on performing, but Bennett Reiner advocates a wider view of what schools should offer, and it's all about defining what music is and then determining what's the best way to teach the students to learn the power of music. And then for why music, Bennett Reiner believed that the essence of music was its power to structure feelings intelligently. Musical pleasures are the key to making music more sought after in school music programs. Music has been treasured by cultures during all times. The musical experience is unlike any other in the way that a person is taken to their own unique world, but also shown cultural values. So it has a very interesting, you have the individual experience in their own mind, but then music was created in the culture and reflects these cultural values. So it has, many dimensions, which is Reimer's position. So for why music education, Bennett Reiner believed that thinking aesthetically gave society the ability to express its character and values. Music education is the way to develop this thinking. He also thought that music contained knowledge of the self and others, which is why it was important and should be taught in public schools. And he wrote that music education needs to be the essential activity providing the foundation of the thriving musical world that surrounds all of us. So so since society has always had music, music education has to be the foundation that supports the future, creation of music. So modern music situations, Bennett Reiner described the current emphasis on large performing ensembles as dangerously narrow. He also worried about offering a music education program in the schools that was relevant to the current students' interactions with music. So now we have all the, electronics to create your own music. So he would encourage, courses in that. New areas where music educators need to have competency included composition, improvisation, social justice, and technology. As technology changed the way listeners interact with music, Bennett Reiner wrote that music education will become even more important because of the new trend toward creating and manipulating music. All right, stop.